The bustling downtown shopping district is filled with the sounds of busy shoppers, the hum of luxury cars, and the scent of fresh pastries wafting from the bakeries lining the street. The morning sun casts a golden glow over the scene, highlighting the sharp contrast between the well-dressed, affluent crowd and the underprivileged few who are forced to observe from the periphery. Among the crowd, 12-year-old Malik sits on the sidewalk near a bakery, his stomach growling as he watches families walk by with shopping bags and food in hand. Malik's clothes are ragged and his eyes are tired, but his expression remains calm. He's used to this life, having learned early on to blend into the background and avoid drawing attention. His only companions are the sounds of the world around him and the occasional passerby who might spare a glance or a coin. On the other side of the street, Eleanor and Richard Davenport, a wealthy couple in their late 30s, stroll casually along with their infant in a high-end stroller. Their outfits are immaculate, their expressions cold and unbothered by the world around them. Behind them, their bodyguards walk a few steps behind, glancing at their phones, unaware of the looming danger. As the Davenports cross the street, everything seems calm. Shoppers continue with their daily routine, oblivious to the changing tides of fate. But then, in an instant, the peaceful scene shatters. A speeding car, its tires screeching against the pavement, slams into the curb, its driver having lost control. The car barrels directly toward the baby's stroller, and time seems to slow down. Eleanor gasps, her eyes widening in terror, but before she can react, Malik springs into action. Without thinking, Malik dashes into the street, his legs pumping furiously as the car nears the stroller. The bodyguards are still oblivious, their faces lit by the glow of their screens. Malik's heart races as he reaches the stroller in the nick of time, shoving it out of the path of the speeding vehicle. The car narrowly misses them, swerving wildly before coming to a screeching halt against the sidewalk. The street falls silent for a moment. The only sound is the heavy breathing of Malik, who stands there, his chest heaving as adrenaline courses through his veins. The Davenports stare at him, shock and disbelief crossing their faces. The bodyguards snap out of their stupor, rushing forward. Eleanor, still clutching the edge of her stroller, looks at Malik with wide eyes, her lips trembling as she tries to process what just happened. Eleanor, breathing heavily. You saved my child." Richard, his face pale with shock, stares at Malik in disbelief, his voice barely a whisper. Richard, shaking his head. You should have been killed." Malik's eyes meet theirs, but he says nothing. His body still shaking, he simply steps back toward the sidewalk, trying to disappear into the background once again. The bodyguards move toward him, their expressions stern as they start to question him, but Malik simply shakes his head and moves back a step. Malik, quietly. "I didn't do it for you, just for the kid." As he turns and walks away, his heart still racing, a small, quiet sense of pride swells inside him. He had done something good today, something no one expected him to do. But as he disappears into the crowd, there's a shift in the air. Something is about to change. Next scene or transition, the camera zooms in on the Davenports, standing frozen in place. Eleanor's hands shake as she grips the stroller, her eyes still wide with disbelief. Richard looks down at their baby, then at Malik's retreating figure, a profound sense of guilt washing over him. The world feels different now. Something has just shifted, and it's only just beginning to unravel. Malik's eyes widen in horror as he watches the car swerve toward the stroller. His heart leaps into his throat, and before he even has time to process, his body takes over. In a split second, his ragged backpack hits the ground with a soft thud as he sprints across the street, his sneakers pounding against the pavement. The car is almost on top of the stroller. The sound of screeching tires fills the air, and Malik's entire world narrows to a single goal: protecting the child. He lunges forward, arms outstretched, and shoves the stroller out of the path of the speeding vehicle. His palms make contact with the stroller's handle just as the car crashes into a streetlight. The force of the collision shakes the ground beneath him, but Malik doesn't stop. He keeps his hand on the stroller, guiding it away from the wreckage as the car finally comes to a halt against the lamppost. A few feet away, the baby cries, unharmed, his tiny face scrunched in fear. Malik stares down at the child, panting heavily, his breath ragged from the exertion. His heart is still pounding in his chest, but relief floods over him. He's done it. He's saved the child. But as the shock settles, Malik feels a hand grip his shoulder roughly. A security guard, who had been standing by a kiosk nearby, now yanks him away from the scene. Security guard, shouting, "You little thief! What the hell did you think you were doing?" Malik's breath catches in his throat. For a split second, he's disoriented, unsure of what's happening. But the security guard's grip tightens, pulling him back further, and Malik's heart sinks. He never expected this. Security guard, aggressively. "You were trying to steal that baby, weren't you? Trying to kidnap it?" Malik's head spins as confusion takes over. His mouth opens, but words fail him. He was trying to save the baby. How could they think he was trying to harm it? Malik, frantically, "No, I wasn't. I saved him. I saved the kid." The security guard shoves him harder, and Malik stumbles back, his feet scraping against the sidewalk. A small crowd has gathered, and some of the onlookers seem unsure of what's going on. Others look at him with suspicion, their eyes narrowing as they whisper to each other. He can see the doubt in their gazes, the assumption that a black kid must be up to no good, even in a moment of heroism. The baby's cries continue in the background, ignored as the crowd watches the interaction between Malik and the security guard. The car's driver, a middle-aged man, stumbles out of the vehicle, clearly drunk, his eyes glazed over and unsteady as he surveys the scene. Driver, slurring, "What's going on here?" The crowd parts, and several people glance at him with disdain, but Malik's focus is on the security guard, whose grip on his arm tightens with each passing second. Security guard, snarling, "You're not fooling anyone, kid. You were trying to kidnap that baby. We're calling the cops." Malik's heart sinks. He wants to protest, to shout out that he was the one who saved the child, but he can't get a word in. He's been silenced by the assumption of guilt. In the distance, sirens can be heard wailing, approaching the scene. Malik's mind races. He doesn't know how to make them understand. How can they possibly think he'd hurt a child? As the sirens grow louder, a figure pushes through the crowd. Eleanor Davenport, the baby's mother. Her eyes scan the scene, and when she sees Malik standing there, still being held by the security guard, her face pales in shock. Eleanor, shocked. "Wait, what's going on here?" She rushes forward, ignoring the officers as they try to stop her. Eleanor, frantically, "That boy, he saved my baby." He pushed the stroller out of the way just in time. He's a hero. The crowd falls silent, and the security guard hesitates, his grip loosening. Eleanor's words seem to carry weight, and as they settle in the air, the tension in the scene shifts. The murmurs from the crowd grow louder, and eyes that had once been filled with suspicion now flicker with understanding. Eleanor turns to the security guard, her voice shaking with anger. Eleanor, sharply, "You were going to arrest him? After he saved my son's life? Are you out of your mind?" The security guard stammers, suddenly unsure of his actions. The police arrive moments later, and after hearing Eleanor's account, they begin to question the situation. As the officers make their way toward the drunk driver, Malik watches, his heart still racing. The confusion and fear are beginning to lift, but he can't help but wonder, how many people will continue to assume the worst about him, even when he does the right thing? And yet, in the midst of it all, Malik realizes that his actions have made a difference. Even if no one else fully understands, he knows that he saved a life today. That's what truly matters. Malik stands frozen, his heart pounding in his chest as he tries to process what's happening. The adrenaline of saving the baby is quickly replaced by confusion and fear as the crowd starts to turn against him. Malik, desperately, "I wasn't stealing! I saved him!" "I pushed the stroller out of the way to save the baby." But the people surrounding him don't listen. They've already made up their minds. Some look at him with suspicion, while others look at him with disdain. The whispers grow louder, and Malik can feel their eyes on him, judging him, condemning him without knowing the truth. Before Malik can say another word, a man in a suit approaches. He doesn't say anything but reaches down and grabs Malik's backpack, yanking it off his back with a force that shocks him. The man opens it and dumps the contents onto the pavement, scattering the few belongings Malik has. Inside the backpack, torn clothes, a few coins, and a half-eaten granola bar. It's nothing of value, nothing to prove Malik's innocence, and yet it's enough to make the bystanders snicker and mock him. Bystander, scoffing, "Yeah, sure. Just another street rat looking for a payday." Malik feels the sting of their words. His chest tightens, and his throat goes dry. The bag he'd carried with him for so long, the one that held the few things that made up his life, is now emptied in front of everyone. And instead of seeing a hero, they see a stereotype, a kid who doesn't belong here. Richard and Eleanor, the parents of the baby, rush over, their panic evident as they clutch their baby in their arms, pulling him closer as if to protect him from the very boy who saved him. Eleanor, gasping, "What's going on? What's happening here?" The security guard steps forward, seizing the moment. Security guard, shouting, "This kid tried to grab your baby." He was about to kidnap him. Malik's eyes widen in disbelief. His stomach churns as he tries to make sense of the situation. How could they think that? He saved the baby, but now it feels like he's the one on trial. Eleanor's eyes flick over Malik, sizing him up. She sees the ragged clothes, the worn shoes, the dirt on his face, and her expression hardens. She doesn't know the truth, doesn't know what Malik did for her child. All she sees is what the world expects her to see, a homeless black boy. Eleanor, coldly, "Get him away from us." "I don't want my child near him." Her words hit Malik like a slap across the face. He's paralyzed, unable to respond, as the crowd murmurs around him. He wants to scream, wants to tell them that he did the right thing, that he saved the baby's life, but the words are stuck in his throat. The security guard doesn't wait for further instruction. He shoves Malik roughly, pushing him away from the family and toward the side of the street. Malik stumbles back, his heart sinking further with each step. He's being treated like a criminal for doing the right thing. Malik, softly to himself, "I just wanted to help." The crowd watches, some looking on with pity, others with judgment. The man who'd mocked him earlier shakes his head, muttering under his breath. Bystander, smiling smugly, "It's always the same with these kids, always looking for a handout, always up to no good." Malik's throat tightens, his fists clenching at his sides. He wants to defend himself, to show them he's not what they think he is, but the words feel hollow in his mouth. He's trapped by their assumptions, and no matter how much he protests, he knows it won't matter. A few moments later, a police officer arrives, his presence commanding attention. The officer steps toward Malik, who stands still, unable to escape the moment unfolding before him. He knows what the officer is about to do, and he feels the weight of it bearing down on him. "Officer," gruffly, "what's going on here?" The security guard quickly explains, pointing toward Malik. Security guard, quickly, "This kid tried to kidnap the baby." He was acting suspicious. Malik looks up at the officer, his chest tight with anxiety. He knows this isn't going to end well. The officer's gaze flicks from the security guard to Malik and then back again. He doesn't ask Malik what happened, doesn't even seem to care. "Officer," shaking his head, "come on, kid. You're coming with me." Malik opens his mouth to protest, but his words are drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd. The officer reaches for his arm, ready to drag him away, but just before he can make contact, a voice calls out from the crowd. A familiar voice, an older woman, her tone firm but compassionate. Neighbor, calling out. "Wait! He didn't do anything. I saw the whole thing." The crowd falls silent for a moment as the woman steps forward, looking directly at the officer. Neighbor, assertively. "That boy saved the baby's life. He pushed the stroller out of the way of a speeding car. He's the hero here, not the criminal." The officer pauses, looking between the neighbor and Malik, confusion spreading across his face. The crowd murmurs, the tension in the air shifting slightly. Malik can feel the shift, but it's small, too small. He's still the one being treated like the criminal, and that hurts more than anything else. He looks up at the neighbor, gratitude flickering in his chest. She's the only one who's seen what actually happened. But will anyone believe her? The officer looks at Malik for a moment longer, then nods, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. "Officer," to the security guard, "you need to let him go. He didn't do anything wrong." The security guard hesitates, clearly not happy with the turn of events, but eventually backs off. Malik, still in shock, looks around the crowd. The tension is slowly dissolving, but the sting of the accusations lingers. Later that night, Richard and Eleanor sit in their luxurious living room, the warmth of their fireplace contrasting sharply with the coldness of the moment. A large flat-screen TV shows a live feed from the restaurant's security cameras, the images frozen on their home's CCTV app. The video footage begins to play. It shows Malik sitting quietly on a park bench, sketching in his notebook, just as the chaos unfolds around him. As the video continues, the car races down the street, jumping the curb and heading directly for the baby's stroller. The footage zooms in on Malik's swift movement as he stands up from the bench, drops his bag, and dashes across the street with startling speed. Eleanor grips the armrests of the couch, her heart racing. On the screen, Malik's actions unfold in slow motion. He's right there, in the path of the car, and without hesitation, he shoves the stroller away, right before the car slams into a streetlight. The car screeches, the driver visibly drunk, but the stroller and the baby are saved. Eleanor's breath hitches as she watches the next scene. Malik being dragged by the security guard, his arms raised as if he's the one at fault. Eleanor, whispering, "He saved our baby." Tears start to well in Eleanor's eyes. Her fingers clutch her lips in disbelief. The man they'd dismissed, the boy they'd accused, had risked his life to save their child, and they had treated him like a criminal. She feels a tight knot of guilt in her chest. Richard beside her leans forward, his face now pale. His expression darkens as he watches Malik, still calm and composed, standing there as the security guard shoves him around. Richard, clenching his jaw. "And we treated him like garbage." The weight of his words hangs heavy in the air. Richard's hand tightens into a fist, his knuckles turning white as he realizes how wrong they were. How blinded by their own privilege, they failed to see the truth. They had assumed, judged, and labeled Malik as a threat when he had only been their savior. As the video finishes, the room falls silent. The only sound is the soft hum of the television. Richard and Eleanor sit motionless, the reality of their actions slowly sinking in. Eleanor's mind races as she thinks of everything that happened earlier, how she had turned away from Malik, how she had dismissed his bravery, how she had chosen to believe the worst of him. Her hands tremble as she reaches for her phone, but she stops herself before dialing. She doesn't know what to say, how to even begin to fix the mistake they had made. Richard stands abruptly, pacing across the room. He stops by the window, staring out into the night. His voice, barely above a whisper, is filled with regret. "Richard, we owe him everything." His words carry a weight that hangs over both of them. Eleanor doesn't respond immediately. She can't. The silence is suffocating. Finally, she speaks, her voice trembling. Eleanor. What do we do now? Richard doesn't answer immediately, but his shoulders slump. There's no easy answer. There's no way to undo the harm they caused. No way to erase the humiliation they imposed on Malik. The realization is a painful truth. They had been wrong. Richard turns to her, his face resolute, though his eyes show the internal conflict raging within. Richard, we make it right. Somehow we make it right. Eleanor nods, the first tears spilling down her cheeks. She has no idea how, but she knows they have to try. The morning sun casts a soft glow over the city, illuminating the gleaming facades of high-rise buildings. In stark contrast, the Davenport's fleet of luxury cars pulls into a quiet neighborhood. The hum of the engines and the distant sound of traffic fade into the background as they drive through a poorer part of the city, finally coming to a stop near a small, peaceful park. Eleanor and Richard step out of their car, both dressed in business attire, but their faces are worn with exhaustion and guilt. The weight of the previous day's events still hangs over them. They haven't been able to stop thinking about Malik, the boy they had wronged, and now they're determined to find him and make things right. Eleanor glances at Richard, her eyes filled with concern. Richard, his face etched with regret, nods and takes a deep breath before leading the way. They walk through the park, searching, scanning every face, every corner. It's quiet now, the playground empty and the usual bustle of the city far away. They pass a few people, but no sign of Malik. Eleanor spots an older man sitting on a bench, sipping coffee, and approaches him with a polite smile. Eleanor. Excuse me, have you seen a boy about 12 or 13, sitting alone around here? He's black, wearing a hoodie and a backpack. The man looks up, nodding slowly. Old man. Yeah, I saw him yesterday. He hangs out around here sometimes, but today, I haven't seen him yet. Eleanor's heart sinks. She had hoped to find him quickly, to apologize, to explain, but it seems Malik isn't easily found. They continue walking down a narrow path that winds through the park, lined with trees, hoping to see him among the shadows. Finally, as they round a bend near the edge of the park, they spot a small figure curled up on a bench, his body hunched slightly, as if trying to make himself small. It's Malik. He's asleep, his back resting against the bench, his head leaning against his torn backpack, which he's using as a pillow. His shoes, old and worn out, are placed neatly beside him. His hoodie is pulled up over his head, hiding most of his face. The sight hits Eleanor like a punch to the stomach. She pauses, taking a step forward, and Richard stays behind her, allowing her the space she needs. Eleanor takes a deep breath, fighting the lump in her throat. This is it. This is her chance to make things right. She kneels down beside the bench, her voice soft, hesitant. Eleanor. Malik. Wake up. The words feel like a lifeline, but as soon as she speaks, Malik stirs, blinking groggily. His eyes squint against the bright morning light, and he shifts, trying to focus on her face. For a moment there's a flash of recognition. His gaze sharpens, and his expression hardens immediately. Malik, sitting up, wary. You're back to call the cops again? His voice is full of suspicion and defensiveness, and Eleanor's heart breaks at the sound. She wants to explain, to apologize, but she knows it's not going to be easy to undo the damage they've caused. Eleanor's eyes fill with tears as she lowers her gaze to the ground for a moment, trying to find the right words. Eleanor. No. I'm here to say, thank you. Her voice is barely above a whisper, but it holds so much emotion, so much regret, and yet, so much gratitude. She can't quite meet his eyes at first, but then she looks up, her tears falling freely. Malik looks at her, his expression still guarded. The past few days have taught him not to trust anyone, especially people like her, rich, powerful, the kind who judge without thinking. But there's something in Eleanor's face, in the raw sincerity of her voice that causes him to hesitate. Malik, softly. For what? Eleanor swallows hard, fighting the wave of emotion that threatens to overwhelm her. Eleanor, for saving our baby, for risking your life for us, for being a hero when no one else would. Malik's eyes narrow slightly, disbelief clouding his features. His mind races, trying to process what he's hearing. He can't believe it. The same woman who had treated him like nothing, dismissed him as just another street kid, is now here, saying thank you. Apologizing. Saying he's a hero. Malik, skeptical. You think I'm a hero? After what you did? Eleanor looks down, ashamed. She knows he has every right to be angry with her. The guilt she feels is suffocating, but she pushes through it. Eleanor, sincerely. I was wrong. I didn't understand then, but I do now. And I want to make it right. She reaches into her purse, pulling out a small envelope. She hands it to Malik, who looks at it cautiously. Eleanor. I don't know what your plans are, but I want to help. This is for you, to give you the opportunity to do whatever you want. No one should have to live like this. Malik takes the envelope, his fingers brushing against hers, and he stares at it for a long moment. The note inside is an offer. Scholarships, connections, opportunities. Everything Malik has been denied for so long. He looks up at Eleanor, his expression unreadable. His heart is heavy with emotions he can't fully process, but beneath the skepticism, something in him softens. He's been let down by so many before, but maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. Malik, quietly. You really mean it? Eleanor nods, tears still streaming down her face. Her voice trembles as she speaks again. Eleanor. I do. I promise. The silence stretches between them, and for a moment, everything feels suspended in time. Malik looks at the envelope again, then back at Eleanor, the complexity of the situation weighing heavily on him. Finally, Malik stands up, his hand still clutching the envelope, but instead of walking away, he looks at Eleanor. Malik. You're right. I saved your baby, but that doesn't mean I'm going to forget what happened. Eleanor nods, understanding. Eleanor. I wouldn't expect you to. Malik gives her a small, tentative smile, his first since they met. Malik. Thank you. He walks away, his shoulders a little straighter, a little lighter. Eleanor watches him go, silently praying that this moment marks the beginning of something new for him, a new chance, a new opportunity, a future he deserves. The grand iron gates of the Davenport estate open slowly, and Malik's heart races as he steps out of the car, staring in disbelief at the sprawling mansion before him. The driveway stretches out endlessly, flanked by perfectly manicured gardens and towering trees that seem to whisper wealth and privilege. He looks around, his feet hesitant on the cobblestone path. He's never seen anything like this before. It's a world so far removed from his reality. The mansion's exterior gleams in the golden afternoon sunlight, and Malik can't help but feel a twinge of disbelief. How did he end up here? As Malik stands there, still trying to process, the front door opens wide. A team of well-dressed staff emerges, moving swiftly toward him. They greet him with warm smiles, offering fresh clothes, a tray of food, and blankets. The sudden outpouring of attention overwhelms him. One of the staff members hands him a perfectly folded suit. Another person carries a hot bowl of soup, steam rising from it. Staff member, cheerfully. We've got everything ready for you, Malik. Richard, looking like he's in his element, steps forward with a wide grin. He clasps Malik's shoulder gently. Richard, smiling. This is your home now, if you want it. Malik's eyes widen, his hands shaking slightly as he holds the clothes. He can't comprehend what's happening. Malik, shocked. But why? I don't belong here. Eleanor walks up beside him, kneeling down to look him in the eye. The warmth in her gaze is evident as she places a hand gently on his arm. Eleanor, softly. Because you saved the most precious thing in our lives, now we want to change yours. Malik swallows hard, trying to process the kindness, the unfamiliarity of it all. He's spent his whole life fighting for scraps, for survival. And now, here he is, standing in front of a mansion, in a world that's light years away from the harsh streets he's known. He feels a lump form in his throat. Is this real? How could he, someone who had nothing, be worthy of this kind of generosity? Malik, hesitant. But I don't deserve all this. I'm just me. Eleanor smiles, a bittersweet smile, knowing that words can't undo everything he's been through. Eleanor, you've always deserved more, Malik. You've had more courage, more heart, than anyone could ever expect, and you proved that when you saved our baby. It's time for you to live a life where you don't have to struggle anymore. You deserve the chance to become whatever you want. Malik's eyes flicker with emotion as he takes in her words. The weight of his past, of the struggles he faced, seems to fade just a little bit. Maybe, just maybe, he can believe in the possibility of a future that doesn't involve fighting for survival. Eleanor gestures to the house behind them, and Malik slowly turns to look at it. He still can't quite fathom it. Everything about this place is so different from the life he's always known. Malik, but what about everything I've been through? How do I fit in here? I don't even know how to begin to live a life like this. Richard looks at him with understanding and a bit of pride. Richard, you don't have to figure it out all at once. We're here to help. But it all starts with giving yourself the chance to try. You belong here, Malik. We believe in you. For the first time in a long while, Malik's shoulders feel lighter. The weight of years of hardship, of struggle, of feeling out of place seems to lift just a little bit. He stands taller, looking at the mansion that now feels like a dream that might just be within his reach. Malik, quietly. I don't know what to say. But thank you. Eleanor's smile widens, and Richard pats him on the back, guiding him into the house. Richard, there's no need to say anything. Just take the first step, Malik. This is your new beginning. As Malik walks through the front door, the warmth of the house embraces him. He's overwhelmed by the kindness, the welcome. For the first time in his life, he feels like maybe, just maybe, he has a place where he truly belongs. And with that thought, Malik steps forward into a new chapter of his life, one full of possibilities and hope. The camera lingers on the front door closing behind him as the screen fades to black. The sound of the house coming to life around him fills the air, the sound of new beginnings. End. 1 year later, Malik stands at the entrance of an elite private school. The morning sun casts a warm glow over the pristine campus, the manicured lawns stretching out like something out of a dream. His footsteps echo as he walks through the gates, his heart racing with anticipation. This is it, the moment he's been working toward. Malik, dressed in a smart school uniform, walks with his head held high, a far cry from the boy who once wandered the streets, unsure of where his next meal would come from. His tuition is fully paid, and his name is on the list. He's not here by chance. He belongs. As he walks through the gates, he pauses and turns back to see Eleanor and Richard standing at the entrance of their luxury car, watching him with pride in their eyes. The proud smiles on their faces tell him everything he needs to know. They've been with him every step of the way, believing in him when he couldn't believe in himself. Malik, grinning, guess I'm not a street rat anymore. Eleanor and Richard exchange a knowing glance, their smiles widening as they watch him. Eleanor, softly, you never were, Malik. Malik walks forward, his confidence growing with each step. It's not just the new uniform or the prestigious school he's entering, it's the fact that he's made it. He's no longer the boy who was written off. He's no longer defined by his past or by the assumptions others had about him. He's something more now. He's somebody with a future. As he crosses the threshold into the school, the reality of his new life starts to sink in. The smell of fresh paint, the sound of students talking and laughing, the feeling of hope in the air. This is his new world. This is where he'll thrive. Inside the school, Malik is greeted by the headmaster, a warm smile on his face as he leads him to his first class. It's a new beginning, a blank page full of promise. No more wondering where he would sleep tonight or whether he'd have enough to eat. His future is here, and it's waiting for him. The camera lingers on the school gates as Eleanor and Richard drive off, proud but content. They know they've helped him start a new chapter, but Malik will write the rest of his story. As the camera fades, we hear Malik's voiceover. Malik, thoughtfully, "I used to think I didn't belong anywhere, but I guess I was wrong. I'm finally home." The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with a feeling of hope and fulfillment, knowing that Malik's journey and the possibilities ahead of him are just beginning. End.